As many of you know, I'm a teacher by profession, so an institution that honors the written word is surely one that I want to celebrate. I'm very grateful, as I said, for the chance to be here. My staff has written me a short speech, so please bear with me. I understand that this museum is the only one of its kind in the nation and will serve as a cultural landmark not just for our city, but for the country as a whole, and be a proud part of our other cultural institutions. It's especially significant that this institution is located in Chicago, home over decades for so many great writers. Carl Sandburg, Gwendolyn Brooks, Nelson Algren, Richard Wright, Studs Terkel, the list goes on and on. So congratulations to all involved on this auspicious day for bringing this national destination point to our city. I'll end with a quote from one of my favorite writers, Toni Morrison. If there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written, then you must write it. To all the budding authors, I say, go and write. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Boone. She's been one of our stalwart supporters right from the beginning, and I'm delighted to welcome her to the podium. Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, you have to demand a response. As Nikki said, I'm Michelle Boone, the Commissioner for the City's Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, and on behalf of Mayor Rahm Emanuel, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today to mark this milestone occasion for the American Writers Museum. I also have a few remarks that my staff also prepared that will mirror some of the things that President Preckwinkle said, but here goes. Chicago is known across the globe for its exceptional writers, from Gwendolyn Brooks, Nelson Algren, and Carl Sandburg to Sandra Cisneros, Scott Turow, and Veronica Roth. And of course, that list could go on and on. So we share similar styles and writers on our team. But really, it's so exciting to be here today to celebrate the first and only museum of its kind in the United States. And the fact that it's going to find its home here in Chicago is really, really wonderful for me, and I know for all of the residents of our city. The American Writers Museum will be a wonderful addition to the city's cultural landscape, bringing many, many visitors to Chicago and a place for all budding writers to go and be inspired. For our residents, this will surely make our city a more vibrant place to live and experience the arts. And I'm just thrilled to look forward to this wonderful new institution joining the many other great cultural organizations here in our city. Thank you and congratulations.
Another one of our longtime supporters is Alderman Ed Burke, 14th Ward, and he has been part of our supporter group from the last 5 years, I believe, early on with Malcolm O'Hagan. Alderman Burke, please.
Thank you very much, and Malcolm, thank you for the invitation to join this morning with this historic announcement. I guess I'm supposed to say good morning, but I occasionally, Madam President, when asked to say some words, try to borrow a phrase from a historical figure. And occasionally I will borrow some words from King Henry VIII, who said to his fourth wife, "Not to worry, I promise I shall not keep you long." This indeed is a rewarding moment in Chicago's rich cultural and literary tradition as we welcome the American Writers Museum to Chicago. It is fitting and appropriate for this museum to locate here in the Midwestern heartland, where in an earlier time of our history, the Chicago Writers' Renaissance delivered to the world of arts and letters the collective voices of Carl Sandburg, Edna Ferber, Theodore Dreiser, Willard Motley, Nelson Algren, Saul Bellow, Gwendolyn Brooks, and so many other distinguished writers of prose and poetry who so eloquently defined Chicago's role in the pantheon of American creativity. The opening of the American Writers Museum in the spring of 2017 will add to the luster of our world-class museums, research libraries, galleries, and live performance venues, which annually draw millions of people to Chicago, an important tourist destination in the new and evolving global economy. It is expected that more than 120,000 people savoring the Chicago experience will pass through the museum's doors each year. Regional tourism is vital to the future of our great city, and this museum will likewise serve as a beacon of hope, illuminating new creative pathways and inspiring students and generations yet to come who desire to connect their inner voice and creative energies with the printed word. Most importantly, it will inspire thought, promote literacy, and further an awareness and appreciation for great literature and poetic expression in our schools. In closing, I'd like to thank the American Writers Museum Foundation and congratulate museum founder Malcolm O'Hagan, who's a docent at the Library of Congress, and Jerry Stead, the former Chief Executive Officer of Square D Corporation, for their real vision, their dedication, and their commitment to bringing the museum to Chicago. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and a pleasant good morning to all. This is one more example why Chicago is the most American of American cities. Thank you.
You can see we stack the room with friends, right? What should we not do? Hill Hammock is a vice chair. He's been, again, part of us from the beginning, and he has graciously just gotten back from Machu Picchu, but he is here this morning to share some comments. Hill?
What's the purpose of a museum? You know, it's not just to be a place where we save the past. That sparks no interest. That's no grand plan. A museum ought to inspire. I worked for a couple of years at Chicago Public Schools, and to watch the kids come on field trips throughout this city, we have a great resource for that. I used to enjoy those myself right back in the day. But this will be an opportunity to hopefully inspire and encourage children by interactive displays that you've seen here on the screen as we've been sitting here. This is an opportunity for children to move beyond their small neighborhood and understand the world at large and participate in that. And hopefully, as Ed said, Ed Burke is a writer and historian himself, hopefully inspire them to carry on this and to become the Scott Thoreaus and the other great writers that have been mentioned here in the future. We're funding this with private funds. This isn't a government enterprise. We're going to do it through the support of many of people here and those that we hope to enlist in months to come. This will be an exciting project. Those of us who like to read will visit this place often because we want to engage you in that way. I also want to thank Alderman Brendan Riley, who could not be with us this morning, but has been very helpful to make this possible because we're in his 42nd ward and we're looking forward to his participation in the future. But join with us, read, and come back and see what the museum has to offer you. Thank
you. All this started with an Irishman for whatever reason instead of an American, but he's an American now. Malcolm O'Hagan's idea is the genesis of where we are today. Malcolm, would you come forward, please?
I have become a Chicagoan, and happily so. What a great city. What a wonderful place for the museum to be located. And now we're very fortunate and excited that we have secured a really terrific site in the block right next to where we are here. I think on one of the busiest blocks in Chicago. I want to thank Alderman Burke, Commissioner Boone for their encouragement and support from the very start. The endorsements we received from many people, the cultural leaders, business leaders here in Chicago that have kept us going. So I have remarks prepared by Nikki, and which I'm going to forego in the interest of time. I want to yield to other speakers. But I just want a quote I like. It was by Chairman Leach. He said, what is written describes a people, and what is celebrated defines their values. It's time to celebrate the great American writers and their work. It's long overdue, and finally we will have a national institution that will do just that. I want to thank all the other people who have been part of this wonderful team that have made this possible and that have gotten us to this point today. And you'll recall the last and final lines of that great American novel, and so we beat on to March 2017, when we look forward to welcoming all of you to the opening of the American Writers Museum. Thank you for your support. We have a wonderful board. We are very fortunate to have wonderful donors. You're going to hear from a couple of them here. At the end of the day, you know, you've got to have the money or it doesn't happen. So we've been very fortunate in that respect. So thank you all for being here, and thank you all for your support.
None of us has mentioned space yet, other than in reference. We are going to be at 180 North Michigan Avenue, so we're just a block north, as Malcolm said. The entire second floor of that building, it is an older, wonderfully beautiful building, built in 1934, I believe, and it's got some wonderful history, great window space, great museum space, so we're very excited to be there. When I was invited to become the executive director, I thought, wow, literature major, loves to read, what's not to like about this job? And it's been absolutely terrific for 2 years already. We've also gathered together 50 author homes museums. Actually, it is now 51 as of yesterday. We picked up another one. So we've more than doubled the number of affiliates with us across the country. That's very exciting. Allison Sansone, where are you? Allison, there. She's with the Ernest Hemingway Museum and home out in Oak Park. She's on the executive committee for the affiliate group. We also have the Beat Museum, Jack Kerouac's museum in San Francisco. We have Walt Whitman. We have tons and tons of terrific authors, and they're all joining with us in this effort. There's a lot more to do. We need to raise $5 million between the end of now and the end of 2016 to ensure that we can open in 2017. We've raised a lot already, but we need that much more. We also are very fortunate to have a challenge from our chairman, Jerry Stead, and his wife, Mary Joy, from whom you're going to hear next. They are providing $1 for every 2 we raise between now and the end of December. So dollars help, $5, $10, $100, $1,000, whatever. All of those donations help and are being matched. And with that, I'd like to invite Mary Joy to come up and say a few words. Mary Joy Stead, our chairman's wife.
Good morning again. I'm speaking today on behalf of my husband Jerry and myself to tell you how happy and excited we are that the American Writers Museum will open here in the heart of the Midwest, Chicago, in early 2017. Jerry and I are spouses as well as partners. Throughout our lives, we have directed our philanthropy to places where we know we can make an impact, and in response, that causes others to move and to help us feel good. The American Writers Museum is such a cause. When Jerry first told me about this exciting new project, we agreed that we had to be part of it. The gifts we have made have given the museum a solid start, and our friends and business colleagues from many parts of the United States are responding positively as we ask them to join with us in the support of the museum. It's nearly impossible to imagine that the United States has never recognized the writers who through our nation's entire history have inspired us, intrigued us, and taught us important lessons about life and the world around us. We are pleased to be lead donors to the American Writers Museum and are looking forward to the opening in just a few short months.
And one of the most recent members, new additions to our team is Lee Conant. She and her husband Doug are also lead donors to us, and she is helping us with some of the educational framework that we're starting to put together. Lee?
It's a pleasure to be here this morning, and what an amazing opportunity we have before us. An opportunity to celebrate great American authors and great American literature. Through unforgettable characters and memorable plot lines, great literature has the ability to have tremendous and long-lasting impact. Literature reflects and shapes our culture. It helps us create our moral center by asking questions and challenging us. When we read, we travel both inside ourselves and out into the world. We only have to take a minute to think of our favorite books. You have some in mind? To know that the enjoyment and satisfaction that they give, the questions and the challenges that they pose, touch all of us. The American Writers Museum is our chance to help encourage a nation of readers and writers. This museum will celebrate great American literature and give us a way to thank the writers who have created it. As Chicagoans, we are both proud and delighted that this museum will find its home in such a centrally located, museum-friendly city. The AWM has amazing space and incredible plans that include the best technology has to offer, all to help spark heartfelt appreciation and an interest in a variety of great American literature. As a member of the founding board of the AWM, it is my great pleasure to play a role in all of this. My husband and I have committed the resources necessary to have a reader's hall. And along the way, we have the fun of asking and wrestling with some interesting questions. What is your favorite book? What makes a great author? How do you define an American author? Right here in Chicago, we will have a chance to ask these questions of each other, while creating a museum that honors the best our country's writers have to offer, and an experience that will be second to none.
So we open it to questions from the media or from the audience. Anyone? Yes?
Lee, what is your favorite novel?
I mentioned before that's sort of like asking someone to choose their favorite child.
Mine is Absalom, just to get you started.
You know what? That's not on my list, and I've never read it.
Oh.
So I will be adding that. Thank you.
I still like the answer, though. How about a favorite author?
Jean Stratton Porter. She was a naturalist, and she funded her nature studies from Indiana. She funded her nature studies by writing fiction. And I stumbled on her when I think I was in 6th grade. It's very cheesy, very nature-laden, romantic fiction. And it just really captured my heart. And I sought her out and gone to antique stores and tag sales looking for books of hers from now on. She specialized in butterflies and moths. And she was known as the bird woman.
That's a myth, if we're talking about Inspector Clouseau. Yes?
How much research or polling have you guys done as far as testing the museum's appeal in Chicago and the water rights?
Malcolm?
We've been working for 5 years, and our exhibit designer, Andy Anway, is here. And Andy, we've assembled a team of experts who are curating, who ask all sorts of questions. When we first started, initially we got grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities to develop some of the early concepts. So we had what they call a series of charrettes here in Chicago, in Washington, and New York, and in Boston. And they provided a lot of the initial input in terms of how could the museum be configured in a way that would engage visitors. We have to be careful not to appeal just to the academics. So we're striking for a middle brow type engaging and interesting presentation. We don't want to be too highbrow or too lowbrow because we want this to have broad appeal. But what you'll find as you do in museums today, on the consoles and so on, you'll be able to dig deeper for people who want to know more about a particular work or a particular author. But on the surface, the appeal will be to the general reader.
Yes, so what is the balance you're trying to strike between the biographies of the authors and the work itself?
Well, both are important. And, we considered calling the museum the National Museum of American Literature. And people felt that would be a turnoff. The word literature has a connotation that doesn't sit well with some people. And then, people are fascinated by writers. That's why they go to book festivals, they go to readings. They want to see the people, they want to meet them, they want to understand how they do what they do. So we focused on American writers, with the emphasis being on the writers. But most importantly, from my standpoint, is showing how their works have influenced the history and the culture of the nation, and which has been profound, starting with Thomas Jefferson and all the way through to our contemporary writers. They're telling us who we are, they're shaping our thinking and defining what it is to be America and American. Yes?
Could you speak a little bit about how you're defining American? Because you're talking, I was thinking a lot about James Baldwin, who's a very famous American author, but he wrote a lot about Paris, so he being included in his works.
Well, I'm an engineer. So I leave those questions to the scholars and the literary people. And, obviously that's something people have to deal with. Do we include T.S. Eliot just because he went off to London, or do we include Nabokov? So there are arguments to me at the margin. There's so many great writers, we don't even have to question whether they're American or not. And one of the challenges and one of the exciting things we have to deal with is the fact that we have such a richness in terms of the number of writers that we could profile and present, but we don't have the space to do that. But one of the keys to the museum will be its changing exhibit nature, and that will allow us to feature different works and different authors on a continuing basis, which is very good for visitors because it means there'll be an incentive for you to come back, not just go once, but come back 6 months, and you'll find a whole different experience in terms of the readers and the works that you will encounter there. I like to think this is going to be an intimate encounter with great American writers and their works. Yes?
The space at Queen Anne, Michigan, is it intended to be a permanent space, or is it going to be a temporary space to test out field first?
Well, time will tell. We have signed a 10-year lease, and we have a vision for a much bigger institution down the road. Time will tell from this installation how quickly that will develop and how it might develop, but that is the longer-term vision that is still there. But the space we have here will allow for a really terrific visitor experience. It will stand by itself. But down the road, we have aspirations for something greater.
Are you going to be having educational programs?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that's so important about Chicago is the collaborative nature and atmosphere. We went to the presidents of the field and the Art Institute and all the cultural institutions, and they were all very excited that the American Writers was adding a new dimension. We have partners with the Poetry Foundation, the Newbery, the Chicago Public Library, the American Library Association, the Great Books Foundation, and so we will collaborate with all of them in educational programs and presentations, both at the museum itself and in other venues throughout the city.
And we're also partnering with organizations that plan curriculum in the schools that's delivered in the schools and also at the museum, so that we can do some more opportunities for children to learn without them necessarily having to come to the museum. We're hoping to be able to take things to them as well as bring them to us.
Can you give an example of what an interactive exhibit might look like with an author?
Yes. I'll ask our exhibit designer to do that. Andy? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Andy Anway with the exhibit design firm that's working with Malcolm and the team on this project. And You're asking a question that's kind of the big question when it comes to presenting authors and their writing, because most people think immediately of a library setting or something that's much more cerebral than you think of typically with a museum exhibition. So one of the things we've been really working on is trying to figure out a way to both present writing in a way that gets at the intimacy that Malcolm referred to, which is very much relates to your personal experience in reading, and also expresses sort of the larger story about both individual authors and the context of writing. So the earlier question about, what is American writing is something we want to address as well. So what you'll find in the museum is a variety of experiences that are both small and large. So I'll give you a simple interactive example that's just sort of a fun and playful way to think about writing, and it's an exhibit we call Are You a Bukowski or a Vonnegut? And in this exhibit, we look at the lifestyle habits of a writer, and we ask visitors to answer a series of questions about themselves. What time do you get up in the morning? What's your favorite beverage? Do you go out at night frequently? Things that are sort of playful. And the answer to those questions will align you with a particular set of authors or authors. So it's just a playful way to say if you happen to like bars and fights, you might be a Bukowski, and you would be getting a little bit of a bio of that person. On a more serious basis, we have probably two good examples of interactives that would dive into authors and their works in a little more detail. So one would be something we call the anatomy of a masterwork. So in this case, we're looking at the very specific elements that make a writer great. So a mastery of skills, hard work, their creativity, and we're asking visitors to kind of look at a sample work through a touchscreen interactive. They would explore plot, character, place, and style, and sort of see how a writer made choices and developed their storyline around those things. And then they could also create their own story using those same four characteristics. Another example would be looking at featured works. So we'll have a series of most likely touch screens. That's what we're showing in the examples that you see up here, where those featured works would especially rotate, as Malcolm said, but we would take deep dives into key masterworks. And these probably would be curated specifically by experts on those particular authors. So an example might be Great Gatsby, recent book by Maureen Corrigan, columnist in Washington, D.C., who's written a terrific book about that book and its context in American writing. So you could explore in detail what makes that work unique, what the character of Fitzgerald was, and those sorts of things.
Ronnie?
Yeah, I think it's important to emphasize that the writers in the museum are going to be changing as the museum evolves. And clearly there's some very contemporary writers, like Sandra Cisneros, who just won a major prize and still has many books ahead of herself. But also the range of writing, which we haven't touched on yet, which will include playwrights and poets and journalists and screenwriters. And as the museum evolves and you think of the new media that are emerging all the time, clearly there's going to be writing coming from those arenas as well. So that children, young people as they come in, are going to be understanding writing on many different levels than have been present at earlier times in history.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the board members who are present to stand up so that the media and our guests can see. Roberta Rubin, former owner of the Bookstall in Winnetka. Ronnie Hartfield, writer and museum consultant. Jim Hansen, formerly with Source Inc. Jay Hammer with Theralogics in Washington. Hill Hammock with CDEC, right? I hope. Okay. Close enough. All right. All these initial things get me crazy. So if you'd like to speak it with any of them more, please feel free to do that. And I'd like the people who were at the podium to please come up for a group picture. And okay, Malcolm has one final comment.
The American Writers Museum is a museum whose time has come. In fact, it's long overdue. But it's also coming at a very good time. where the technology is changing in terms of how people get their information. We have gone from the clay tablet to the electronic tablet, and it's not the container that's important, it's the content. And so we're coming online where all of the interactive technology is now available that wouldn't have been available 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so we have the convergence of the change in presentation technology and the different ways in which people, and young people in particular, are interacting with knowledge. And so that's a very fortunate timing from our standpoint.
One more question. You're saying it's a good time to get in the museum business, but the Art Institute field will struggle with operational costs in the last couple of years. Is it really a good time to get in the museum business in Chicago?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Particularly an American Writers Museum. I mean, what could be more worthy? And it doesn't exist, and it doesn't exist anywhere in the country. And what an amazing opportunity for people to step forward and present a gift to the nation and to Chicago, and a cultural gift that is so fundamentally important. And, you know, the amazing thing, while most people respond when we tell them about it, I can't believe it doesn't exist already. So this is a good time, yeah.
Oh, do you foresee a lot of like high profile writers coming through for readings, and like what kind of cultural programming do you foresee?
Sorry, Evan.
Yes, we're planning a series of author events, writer events at the museum, and we also have been doing those around the city for the last couple of years, and we get very good attendance, a lot of interest on the part of the publishing houses as well as the writers themselves. They've all been very interested and willing to be helpful. All right, thank you all for your questions and comments. We'll be around to answer more offline.